There are some things that you need to know about being a soldier in the United States Army. And no, I don't mean like you need to know how to do land nav or you need to know how to march in formation. I'm talking about things you need to know about, things that are part of the lifestyle of being a soldier. And I want to educate you about those things. So that video starts right now. There's going to be some pretty common things that you're going to know about for becoming a soldier. You're going to know that you can't quit your job in the Army. You can't do drugs and you have to stay in shape. Those are probably pretty common type of things that you probably are already going to know about. But I got 5 that I want to tell you about that recruiters probably don't tell you about. Those Army commercials aren't telling you about. So I want to make sure you're informed. These aren't necessarily to like discourage you from joining the Army or anything else like that. They're things that are, you can deal with them kind of a thing. I don't really think, in my opinion, that they're deal breakers for joining the Army, right? But they're things that it's helpful to know about them before you become a soldier. So let's get into things. Let's talk about the first one that I've got, and that is that you won't always do your job or your MOS in the Army. Now, what the percentage is of you doing your job and not doing your job, that sometimes depends on your MOS. There's definitely some jobs, some MOSs out there that you barely do your job and you do a lot of other things other than your job. And then there's other jobs where you do mostly your job and then occasionally some things that are not related to your job. Let me give you some examples of both sides. There's, for example, the job of a welder in the Army, right? There's a specific MOS to be a welder. Well, you're not working in a body shop. You're not doing a lot of fabrication stuff. So commonly you're not going to do a lot of welding. You might have some things here and there, but not on a day-to-day basis that you're just every day showing up to the Army to go weld stuff every day. You might have different units and different kind of taskings where you'll do it more often than others, but your most common unit that I've usually seen these MOSs, these individuals in this MOS do, is they're attached to like a platoon in the motor pool for maintenance, right? And so that way, if they have something that has to be welded, you've got a specific individual that can do the welding on that. So again, you're not welding stuff all the time. So they usually cross-train those individuals to help out with services, to be able to do maintenance on vehicles and everything. And then when something needs to be welded, cool, you got an individual to be able to do that. Infantry is actually another one. Unless you're deployed to a combat zone, you're not really doing your MOS. You're not really doing your job. You're going to be doing a lot of practice for your job in the form of like training and everything. But actually doing your job, that's only going to come when you actually deploy to a combat zone. So it depends on the unit as far as how much training you actually do, right? Because at least you get to do the practice for it and kind of get better at those skills. So when it does happen, or if it does happen, you're ready for that. But unless you're going to the field or doing some other kind of weapons training, you're probably just going to be stuck doing like a bunch of other crappy details and stuff. And sometimes, depending on that unit and what's going on, that can tip the scales as far as how often you're doing that training and how often you're doing those crappy details. But some MOSs that you will probably do your job a lot. Human resources. They're probably going to be working in an S1 shop. They're going to be doing human resources type of things. You're going to probably do your job most of the time. Cooks is another one. You're rarely going to have to do all these other side tasks. You're going to have to do them sometimes, but most of the time you're going to be, cooking breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever your shift is, whatever type of thing. That's an MOS that you will mostly do your MOS in. Hell, even my old MOS as an 88 mic, kind of 50-50. There's times where you might have to transport stuff down to a range, or for, taking stuff from a warehouse over to the motor pool for parts and a few other things. Otherwise, the rest of the time, it's just kind of like sweeping the motor pool, maintain your vehicles, doing some other stuff around the area or whatever. So that one's kind of more of a 50-50 thing, but it's definitely not like some people think where you're just a truck driver on the road hauling vehicles. No, you're doing stuff on base and there's not always stuff that needs to be transported. So sometimes that one's a little bit 50-50. So just be aware, based on your MOS, it'll kind of vary as far as how often you do your MOS and how little you do your MOS. If you're curious about a specific MOS, you can drop some comments down in the comment section down below. I'll do my best to answer as many as I can. If you're curious about that, maybe other people can help me out and kind of give some input as far as, does that MOS do with your MOS all the time, or is it a lot of extra bull crap and then only occasionally doing your MOS? So drop your questions in the comment section if you got them. Now, number 2 is for active duty, and actually all of these are pretty much for active duty anyways, but number 2 is that you're restricted to a 250-mile radius from where you're stationed at. Now, technically the 250-mile radius is a common one. By regulation, there is no set distance, but the most common one that commanders set is 250 miles. And what that means is if you're stationed at, let's say, Fort Carson, Colorado, and you've got family in Texas, and you're thinking that, hey, I got 48 weekends and I got a little time off here and there, it's not that bad of a drive. I'll go ahead and drive down to Texas and go spend some time with my family and then head back before, we have to go back to work. If it's more than 250 miles, not going to happen. you can make it happen. You can put in what's called a mileage pass, and that's kind of like telling your leadership what your plan is, how you're going to get to where you're going to, how you're going to get back, and all that stuff. And if they approve your plan, then sure, you can get approved for that 250-mile pass, to be able to go outside of that radius. If you go on leave, then that obviously allows you to go outside the 250-mile radius. That's the legitimate way of doing it if you want to go outside that 250-mile radius. There will be a lot of veterans and a lot of people in the Army that'll tell you, screw that, just take off, not a big deal. Don't tell your leadership you're going to this place. No big deal. Maybe, right? I've known a lot of people that, yes, they do get away with it, but I've also known some people that have gotten caught and gotten some serious trouble for that. The ways I've seen people get caught is that somehow leadership got wind of these individuals took off to wherever, and they knew it's like pretty far away. So like, all right, you guys want to play these games? We're gonna have an alert. So they would have an alert, which means that everybody has to be into like the work area type of thing by a certain time, right? To give you plenty of time to get dressed and everything and be in. If you were even at 100 miles away or 200 miles away, you'd have enough time to get back and be accounted for. And if you can't make it in that time, then you must have been obviously outside that 250-mile radius. Now you're in trouble. Other ways I've seen people get in trouble is that they got in trouble. They were down wherever they were at that was outside that 250-mile radius. Maybe got in trouble with the police, maybe got hurt in some way. And then the leadership found out that this happened while they were at this other location and they weren't on leave, they weren't on pass, so they got in trouble. So can you get away with it? Possibly. I don't recommend it because if you get in trouble, that sucks, but there's going to be a lot of veterans, a lot of other people will tell you, just take off, just do what you got to do. Nobody's going to care. They'll care if they find out about it. So if you want to do it the right way, you got to put in for mileage pass, but don't expect that every weekend or whatever, you want to go back home and visit family that's more than 250 miles away from where you're stationed at. You got to do it the right way if you want to not get in trouble. Now, I've still got 3 more to kind of cover, but if you're new here, you're not subscribed to this channel, this is what I like to do here on this channel is provide you with as much knowledge as I can from my experience and my knowledge from being in the Army. So if that's something you're interested in because you want to join, you're currently in, you're a veteran, you want some nostalgia, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. Let's get into the number 3 one, the third one, not number 3 one, the third one. If you are a single soldier in the United States Army on active duty, you're going to be living in the barracks. So that means you can't have pets and you can't have firearms living in the barracks. A couple reasons for these, all right? So like, let's say right now you've got, Fido at home that's a cute Chihuahua, Pit Bull, Rottweiler, whatever. You also got Fluffy, this cute little furry cat or whatever. And you want to be able to keep them with you when you go to the Army, but if you're single, that means you're gonna be living in the barracks and you're not allowed to have pets in the barracks. That's all pets. I mean, some people might be able to get away with having a fish, but technically you can't have fish. You can't have lizards. You can't have cats, dogs, nothing, no pets, period. Maybe you can get away with sea monkeys if you really want to have sea monkeys. But nonetheless, the reason for this is that if you go to the field, you go deployed or whatever, who's gonna take care of the pets, right? And they're gonna just crapping all over the place and smelling the place up, maybe die because you're not getting fed or whatever, if you're off in the field or whatever. So not allowed to have pets in the barracks. Along with that, firearms. Firearms are not allowed in the barracks because they don't trust soldiers, I guess, in the barracks type of thing. I don't know if it's a good reason, bad reason, but nonetheless, you can't have firearms in the barracks. You can kind of get around that because you do have the availability to have your weapons put into the arms room, which the arms room is where they store all the military weapons, and you can have like personally owned weapons stored in there. So if you have a pistol, a rifle, you like to go hunting, do some target practice or whatever type of thing, but you live in the barracks, then you can have it stored in the arms room. But then the hassle you have to deal with is if you want to go hunting, you want to go check these weapons out to go, target practice and whatever, you're gonna have to coordinate with the armorer to be able to go and actually check those out of their arms room. So if it's a Saturday, it's a holiday, you're gonna have to hope that the armorer is cool enough to want to come in on their day off to open up the arms room for you, give you your weapon, and then open it back up for you to put it back inside there because you can't take it back to your barracks room when you're done. So you can technically still have weapons if you're living in the barracks, just not in the barracks. You have to put it in the arms room. Ends up being this big hassle. So, if you were married, then sure, you would have the availability of having like your spouse, you'd be off post type of thing. You can have like your weapons locked up. You can have pets that has someone to take care of them. But if you're a single soldier, you're living in the barracks and you can't have none of that stuff. So if you have that stuff now and you're about to join the Army, you're thinking about joining the Army, make sure you got some kind of plan for what you're going to do with your weapons. What are you going to do with your pets? You're not going to be able to take it with you if you're living in the barracks. Number 4, you may remember the good old days and be able to look back on it when you're in the Army. Remember the time when you didn't feel so well, right? You had a tummy ache, maybe you had the flu, maybe you had a cold, whatever. And you call your boss and say, hey boss, I'm not feeling it. I'm going to need to stay in bed, kind of recover from this whatever thing I got going on. And I'll be back to work in a couple days, tomorrow, whatever the case is. Your boss being like, okay, cool, just put down sick time on your time card, or you're just not getting paid for that day, whatever the case is, and be okay. Can't do that in the Army. Maybe you might have some really rare, super cool leadership that is cool like that and maybe trusts you, but most of the Army, it's not gonna work that way. Because what you're gonna have to do is if you end up in that situation where you wake up, you're not feeling well, you got a flu, you got the cold or whatever, you have to go on what's called sick call. So typically in the morning, they have this 6:30 formation where you do accountability, make sure everybody's alive and safe before they start physical training. And before that 6:30 formation, you have to check in with your leadership to tell them, hey, I'm going to go on sick call. That's usually maybe like around 6 o'clock. It may depend on the unit as far as the times, but some units have a common time frame of maybe like 6 o'clock or a little bit before 6 o'clock in the morning. And so you go in, you get checked out by the medics to see what's wrong with you. If they determine that, yeah, you're pretty bad and you probably shouldn't be working, you shouldn't be doing physical training, then they can put you on what's called quarters, which allows you to be able to go home, go back to the barracks, sleep it off, stay in bed type of thing for however long they put you on quarters for. But if they say that, this isn't that bad, here's some Motrin, here's some Tylenol, drink some water, change your socks, get back to work, then you're just kind of stuck going back to work. So be aware of that. That's the tough part about being on active duty, is that you can't call in sick, right? Like I said, I've heard from a few people that they had like really cool leadership and they would call up their supervisor, call up their, their squad leader saying, hey, I don't feel very good. And they were pretty cool. Maybe you were a trustworthy person and they were like, yeah, go ahead and stay home. Just keep checking with me. Let me know how you're doing. I'll see you tomorrow, right? Cool. Awesome. Most of the Army is not like that though. Now, number 5, last one, you can potentially change your MOS or change your job if you're not happy with it. Now, that doesn't mean like you go and you sign up to be an 11 Bravo, to be an infantryman, and you go through all the training and then you show up at your unit and you're like, this is not really for me. I want to change different MOSs. No, it's not going to work that soon. Typically, your eligibility to attempt to do this, and I say attempt because it's not guaranteed, but attempt to be able to change your MOS is going to be usually when you have 1 year left on your contract. If you did a contract for, let's say, 4 years, pretty common, right? You do a 4-year contract. So after you've done 3 years in the Army, you're now in your last year of the Army, you're eligible to re-enlist or to extend your contract and stay in the Army for X amount of years longer, however many years it is that you're going to re-enlist for. During that time is what you're going to do is you're going to talk to what's called a retention NCO. That's your person at your unit that's kind of like you're in the Army recruiter, the person that's trying to keep people in the Army. You talk to that retention NCO about your options for re-enlisting. You're going to be re-enlisting for 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, whatever the case is. See if there's some bonuses to re-enlist. See if there's something like choice of duty stations, seeing if there's like some school options you can get to be able to go to some school, all of those kinds of things. And maybe if you're interested in trying to change your MOS, then you could probably talk to them about trying to change your MOS. You still have the basic requirements though. Like if they're requiring, a skilled technical score of this or a GT score of that, and you don't have that, then you're not gonna be able to get that MOS. Now you can retake the ASVAB even while you're in the Army to be able to improve those scores, to be able to have that eligibility. So you go to like the education center and be able to do some study courses and then retake the test. And if you score higher, then cool, they'll count that. If you score lower, they just won't count it. But that would allow you to improve those scores to be able to reclass, hopefully. But then you also have to have eligibility for that MOS. Like if they're not taking new recruits, new individuals in that MOS, then obviously you can't get it. They might even have sometimes where they don't want to take prior service individuals, people that have already been in the Army or already currently in the Army. They'd rather have fresh new people in that MOS, and that may restrict you from being able to kind of switch over to MOS. So don't bank on it. It's not a guaranteed thing, but that's your possibility, your window of opportunity to try to do that. If you spend that first X amount of years and you get to your last year of your contract and you want to try to switch over to a different MOS, potentially you could do that. Now, you can't just keep doing that over and over and over again. I've heard of people wanting to say that they want to do 4 years as an 11 Bravo, and then they want to switch to do this MOS, and then after 4 more years, switch to this MOS, and then after 4 more years, switch to this MOS. There's going to come a point where, based on your rank and your time in the Army, they're going to cut you off and be like, no, we don't want you to be going in as a brand new, let's say it's an 88 Mike, just as an example, my old MOS, right? They don't want you being a E7 who's been in the Army for 13, 14, 15 years, whatever the case is, and being a brand new person that doesn't know anything about how to drive these trucks, and now being in that position, and you can't really lead soldiers because you don't have any of that experience. So there's going to be a point where they kind of cut you off. I've heard of like people on the reserves and National Guard side being a little bit easier to be able to kind of switch from MOS to MOS to MOS because they're doing it to be able to get into a slot to be able to get promoted, and they're a little bit more lenient with that. But on active duty, they're going to get to a point where they're going to kind of cut you off. I would expect you'll be lucky if you can reclass once, twice would be, pretty lucky. 3 times, probably pretty impossible on active duty. Maybe on reserves, National Guard, super easy to do it like 4 or 5 times, but active duty, if you reclass probably more than twice, that's probably extremely rare or extremely difficult to be able to do. So really the best thing to do is just make sure that you get a good MOS that you're going to enjoy, something that you're going to want to do for a really long time, for the whole time you're in the Army, whether that's 20 plus years or 4 years and then get out, whatever the case is. You want to make sure you're getting into an MOS you're going to really enjoy. And if you want to know how to pick that MOS, well, you're in luck, because I got a video right here that you can watch where I talk about how to pick your ideal MOS and how to find what MOS is maybe best for you. So make sure you check out that video. Check out the links down in the description box down below. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel and hit that thumbs up. I'm Christopher Chaos. I'll see you next time. See ya.